Xiye, welcome to Climate Action Live.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Xiye, you're a climate justice activist, Indigenous rights advocate, and storyteller. Could you tell us about your mission and your latest work?
Yeah, so I have been in the climate space for about 5 years now personally, but my parents have been in this space since 1992 when they met in the Rio Summit. And my dad is from an indigenous community in Mexico, so I grew up with all of these values of reciprocity, of giving back to Mother Earth, and also working intergenerationally, which I think is one of the things that we're missing the most in the climate space. And right now I'm working on a film. It's called The Way of the Whale. And we follow the path of the gray whale from Baja California Sur all the way to the Arctic, meeting communities, seeing how the challenges of the gray whale, the challenges that the gray whale has been facing, and also just how historical winds, which this wind was able to protect the largest area in all of Latin America, La Biosfera del Vizcaíno, how historic winds can help us now, my generation, informed the fights that we're fighting, because we understand that it's not only about, in the past we used to talk only about environmentalism, conservation as separate from social issues, but winds of the past have shown us that they're interconnected. And that is what I think my path is going towards, making sure that every single project that we're advocating for also has social justice embedded in it, and those indigenous values of being in balance with Mother Earth and with each other.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I can't wait to see that film. So, it's June 2024. What's your assessment of the current situation in relation to our journey of protecting our planet and its people?
We are at a very difficult moment right now, June 2024. I just came back from Germany from a conference that happens there every year between the climate conferences, the big ones, the COPs. They're called the subsidiary body meetings, the SBs, and people don't know about this conference. But all of the countries are there negotiating our future. So that's why we show up. I go with a group of other youth across the world, really diverse group, and we show up to show governments that even if the negotiations that they're engaging in are super technical, we will still be there and we will still show up putting this pressure. This time, we're particularly talking about climate finance because that is the one thing that developed countries are pulling back still. And for example, we have this number of $100 billion a year for loss and damage, which is when a country experiences effects of the climate crisis, they will get money from this fund. But it's usually done in loans, in all of these type of things that put developing countries under more and more stress, the global south under more stress. So what we want is for the global north to assume their historical responsibility to the climate crisis, because that is the first step towards taking up this responsibility of having been extractors for so long. So that is what we're working on. And it's a tough situation, but we're still there. We're still exerting pressure. We're still protesting. And more than anything, we're becoming translators between the technical things and the voices on the street and all of these different sectors to make sure that the voice of youth and the voice of the people at the front lines is heard.
So, a phrase, no climate action, no peace. Could you talk to me about what you think when you hear that statement?
So last year, I actually was at the United Nations in International Day of Peace, and they asked me to deliver a speech about climate and peace. And I hadn't realized until I wrote that speech about all of the different connections that there are. Um, for example, I think that the climate crisis itself is violent, that hurricanes, that wildfires, that rising temperatures, that is a form of violence for people displacing people from communities. And climate action, resilience, adaptation, mitigation is all to preserve peace. Because when I think of the future, I want a peaceful world for my children and future generations. And that is not only in terms of war, it's also and conflict, it's also in terms of a stability of the planet that allows us to live in peace. And another thing is the path that has brought us to this crisis is a relationship of disconnect with Mother Earth, of also another type of violence. So we also need to have peace with the earth, peace with Mother Earth. And realize that we are part of Mother Earth, not just, an entity separate and we can do whatever we want. So I think once we reconnect with the idea of peace, we can start to live better. And I know a lot of people say it sounds naive, but I always tell them, isn't it naive to think that we can keep living in this way, in a way that is destroying the very planet that gives us life?
So, given the global crisis that's unfolding, do you think that we have the ability to unite and stand together to protect our planet and each other? And what advice would you give to people to make an impactful contribution?
I absolutely am 100% a stubborn optimist when it comes to climate action because I have seen people doing the work for decades, including my own parents. And what they have told me is we have never seen the climate movement grow so fast than in the past 5 years. So I know we have momentum. I know that now more than ever, more people know about the climate crisis, but not just the issues, they know about the solutions. And now there's all of these fellowships and prizes and classes about climate solutions to support climate solutions. And so what I would tell people is really we are here as architects of the future. The future is truly in our hands, and we can decide how we show up, how we use our skills to shape up the world that we want to live in. And it's not that you have to change the way that you are or your personality or your career to be part of the climate movement. It's just lending your skill and doing it with a lens that takes care of the planet. And that makes you already a climate activist. And if you don't like that term, which many people don't, that makes you a shaper of the future for the positive.
Finally, Xiye, if people would like to support you and your work, how can they best do that?
Well, you can support the upcoming film that I have coming out called The Way of the Whale. It's still in post production, so we probably won't be hearing about it publicly until the beginning of 2025. But you can also support me on my social media on Instagram at Xiye Beara and on Twitter at Xiye Bastida.
Well, Xiye Bastida, you're absolutely a true inspiration to so many. Thank you for participating in Climate Action Live and the very best of luck on your journey.
Thank you so much for having me.